How much do you think the average person on the street knows about what goes on in the Pentagon and behind the scenes of the government?
Brother, it's forget the government and Pentagon. How many parents, they can tell you who's a quarterback of their favorite football team and they can tell you their stats, but how many parents know who their kid sits next to during lunch or in second period math class? Government is, I mean, that's basic facts, man. We, as humans, most of us, we suck. We don't know anything, and we're so used to being force-fed information by whatever outlet du jour we want to tune into, you know? If I'm a liberal, I'll watch this. If I'm a conservative, I'll watch that. I'll go straight to my echo chamber and, you know, just hear what I want to hear and have people tell me not only information that they think I need to know, but even my opinion of what it should be about. This is a much, much bigger issue than just UFOs and UAP. We as people have become extremely lazy, and we no longer are willing to ask the hard questions. We're not.
You were part of one program, but you also referenced this second program called the Legacy Program.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Legacy Program?
It is the traditional, long-held effort by the U.S. government to study UAP. People think ATIP was the only program in OSAP. Before that, there was Blue Book, and before that, the Legacy Program is the collaborative effort of individuals over the course of several decades that have been looking into this topic for the U.S. government and by the U.S. government.
And okay, just doing similar things to what ATIP did.
Yes, and more robust and much more well-funded.
I wonder why they don't fund it as well these days.
There's a reason for that too that I would need permission to talk about. There were some distractions in the early 2000s that lifted and shifted resources away from efforts to something else. You probably can figure out what that was, but there was an enormous resource drain and refocusing in the early 2000s to focus on something else, and so.
I heard you talk as well about this sort of different types of aliens per se, because when we think of aliens, we reflect on movies that we've seen, and they have like the big heads and things like that, and maybe they're like white, tall, skinny with like the big arms and the big legs and stuff like that. Is that what people in the Pentagon consider aliens to be? What we see in movies?
I can't speak on behalf of other people. I can only speak on behalf of me. I've been very, very careful not to stereotype anybody or anything. I think it's important we have to keep an open mind, because when you say the word aliens, you are automatically presuming that these things are from outer space.
Mm-hmm.
They might not be. There's lots of different options. It doesn't have to be from outer space.
What do you believe? Do you believe they're amongst us?
Well, can I explore this with you,
mm-hmm.
this question? Okay, so it's not an either or. So in the beginning of our conversation, I told you I went to the University of Miami and I studied microbiology, immunology, and the study of parasites. Now, if you go to some anthropologists, they will suggest to you that modern human beings, Homo sapiens sapien, has been around roughly between 100 to possibly 200,000 years. So on a 24-hour clock, right, it's only the last 2,000 years, and it was the Greeks that proposed there were two fundamental life forms on this planet, and you were either a plant or you were an animal, and human beings were an animal. And so the 24-hour clock, you're probably talking maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes ago, before midnight. Well, it was 300 years ago during the Renaissance or the days of enlightenment that we discovered an entire new life form on this planet that's been here all along. And that was neither plant nor animal. It was the world of fungus. And we pat ourselves on the shoulder and say, hey, we found a new life form. In this 24-hour clock, it's been probably the last maybe 10 seconds, last 120 years only, that we discovered for the first time the true dominant alpha life form on this planet. And in fact, if you take all the biomass of every plant and all the biomass of every animal and all the biomass of every fungus and added it all up together, it still will not equal the biomass of this hidden yet dominant life form that's been on this planet all along. And it wasn't until we could have the technology to curve glass and look through a little tube and famously shout the words, little beasties, did we discover the world of microorganisms, okay? The true dominant life form on this planet that's been here all along. In fact, it's inside of us. It makes us up. It's pervasive everywhere. And we just discovered it. So when I say to people, when people say, oh, do you think from outer space? They can be from outer space, inner space, or frankly, the space in between. These things could be just as natural to our environment as we are. Maybe we're at the point now where technologically we can start interacting. Maybe they're from under the ocean. Look, less than 10% of the ocean floor has been mapped. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do of our own oceans. Is it possible these things are just as natural to this planet as we are? Possibly. Or is it possible these things are from somewhere else? Yes, that's possible too. So we have to keep all options on the table until they're no longer on the table. We live in an infinitely, infinitely complex universe. See if I can, and I've often used this before to try to help people wrap their heads around this. We perceive life through five fundamental senses. And if we can't touch it, taste it, hear it, smell it, etc., we can't interact with it. We have no idea it's there. Where I live out in Wyoming, we have these beautiful night skies, unoccluded night skies, and you can see all the heavens, beautiful Milky Way in front of you. If you were to look through that same night sky through a radio telescope, you would see something different. You would see nebula. You would see things that you can't normally perceive in the ultraviolet and infrared spectrums and X-ray, right? It's there, you just can't perceive it. It's just like if you had cell phone vision. All of a sudden now you can see in Wi-Fi and 5G. You would see an entirely different reality around you. So we perceive life through a very narrow spectrum of visible light, the visible light spectrum, when reality is most everything else kind of lies beyond that. And then you have a scale issue. You have a scalability issue. What do I mean by scalability? We are a human being. You and I are having a lovely conversation here somewhere in some place. On this planet, revolving around an obscure star in an obscure part of the Milky Way galaxy amongst a supercluster of other galaxies. The visible horizon from any direction we look at of light, the size of the universe, has been estimated to be between 13.6 to 13.9 billion light years. Billion. What is a light year? A light year is the distance that a photon of light can travel in the course of a year. And how fast is that? Well, light travels at roughly 186,000 miles per second, or 7.5 times around our planet in 1 second, right? Really fast. Imagine how far that goes in a year, and now imagine how far that goes 13.9 billion years, right? So we're in the middle of the universe here. Our universal horizon in any direction is 13.9 billion light years, and in that direction, another 13.9, so roughly 27 billion light years across, and we're in the middle. Now, scientists are estimating that's less than 10% of the actual size of the universe. The universe is actually much, much bigger than that. This is just the universal horizon because the expansion of the universe, light this far will never reach Earth. So now you're talking about a size 100 billion light years, and as small as we are right in the middle, this infinitesimally small speck, keep in mind, in our visible universe alone, there are more stars than there are grains of sand in all the beaches in all the world. Think about that incomprehensible number. And as small as we are. Now, humor me with this. Take one atom, one hydrogen atom, Avogadro's number, 1 times 10 to the negative 23, okay? That's roughly the same order of magnitude as we are to the universe. So we have this entire huge universe outside and this entire little universe inside every single human being. And we as human beings can only interact with 1 or 2 orders of magnitude up or down. Otherwise, the universe is simply too big or too small. We just will never be able to know. And that is reality. That's where most of everything lies. That's where most of reality is. It's either up there or inside or everything in between. So I guess my point is, every time when people say, well, aliens, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because most people say aliens in Hollywood and little eggheads running around. There's so much more to it. This is us imposing a Hollywood idea of what an alien should look like. And by the way, let's not forget their anthropomorphic values, right? They look like us, have arms like us, and heads like us, and eyes like us. Because we view everything through anthropomorphic eyes. the reason why we call our dogs human names and we treat them like humans. Because we treat everything as if they have human values, human motivation, human intent, when we may be dealing with something completely different. This could be like artificial intelligence. It's just binary, input in, input out. We don't know. And so these are some of the questions we have to, really as we're moving down this pathway, this is why I always tell people, look, all options have to be on the table until they're no longer on the table, because we simply don't know.
We also don't know what their intentions are and why they might be here.
That's right.
Why they might be visiting here.
That's right.
Do you have any theories as to what their intentions might be?
Brother, there's a whole range of theories. I mean, it could be simply as like when we're on the African Serengeti and we see the wildebeest and we're in a helicopter and, not to make fun of it, but you sit there and say, oh, that one, we dart it, boom. What do? We land the helicopter, we come out, we draw blood, we do tests. We want to see its diet and its migratory patterns, its health. And then what happens? The wildebeest wakes up, kind of groggy, disoriented, stumbles over to the watering hole and he's like, hey, Bill, you're not going to believe this, man. This thing came out of the sky. All some weird stuff happened. I was being touched. I woke up and now my butt hurts, right? It could be something as simple as that.
Do you believe any of those reports? Because people do say that they were abducted by aliens.
Well, this is my point, right? So that's one option. The other option could be simply to monitor us. It could be that we are getting very close to being able to replicate what they can do. And if that's the case, maybe technologically we're only 100, 200 years behind. And if that's the case, now all of a sudden we're going to be new neighbors, right? And that could be problematic because our species is very violent. We do a lot of bad things to each other. Are we really ready to go out and meet our potential friends from out of town? I don't know. I mean, we're pretty horrible to each other. So maybe not. Certainly if I was them and I knew we were getting close, I would probably be pretty interested in what we're doing too. As far as the abductions, I don't know what to tell you because I've never been abducted. I've had some people that swear by it, but you can't have a conversation about abduction and then say, oh, they're here for peaceful reasons. It doesn't work that way.
Do you believe them, the people that swear by it?
I believe that they are being truthful, that that experience they feel is real. I don't think they're lying. But the question is,
did it happen is the question.
Yeah, I can't say because I wasn't there. But I can tell you that we definitely have people that have had experiences where they are now on U.S. government full medical disability in writing because they got too close to a UAP. Now, was it deliberate that they got injured or was it just a byproduct of the technology? They got too close to it.
What does that mean they got too close to it? And you mentioned that there's some people that are on U.S. disability allowance, so they're being paid by the U.S. government.
Mm-hmm. In writing because they had a UAP encounter. They were involved in a UAP encounter.
And what does that mean, UAP encounter, in that definition?
Well, so let's look at it this way. Here's a better one. You go to the airport, right? And I'm going to hop on a 737 and go fly to Fort Lauderdale. There's no real threat there. I'm getting on a plane. It's safe. Sit on the seat, have a cocktail, watch a movie, read a magazine. Now, if I were to walk out onto the tarmac, onto the runway of where that same airplane is, and that airplane decides to spool up its jet engine, chances are I'm going to be injured. I'm going to get burned. I'm going to lose my hearing and possibly a lot worse, right? There are individuals, U.S. government servicemen and women, and there's also intelligence officials who have been injured by getting too close to a UAP, whether incidentally or it was deliberate or not. The question is, was that injury sustained because it was deliberate, or was that injury sustained because it was just a matter of being too close to the technology? For example, it's like putting your head near a microwave oven when it's on. It's probably not very good for you, right?
And have those people spoken out?
Absolutely.
What's like a good example?
There's an individual right now named John Burroughs who had his medical files classified in the U.S. government, thankfully because of late Senator John McCain from Arizona, forced the Air Force to release his files. And as a result, he was able to get full medical disability because of an incident that involved him and another individual in the UK, known as the Rendlesham Forest incident or Bentwaters incident, where there was a joint U.S. and UK base, and there was a UFO incident where this thing had landed in the forest. And they went out to go see this thing, and they were injured.
And they were in the military at the time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Air Force Special Police or police officers.
They were injured.
They were injured, and that's not all. There's a lot of people that have been injured right now that are under medical care by government doctors. That is a fact.
When they give their account of what happened, what do they say?
It depends who you ask. I mean, there's some consistency within some of the stories, and then there's some divergence. You know, it's like somebody who says they've been in a car accident, depending what kind of car you're in, and was it a multiple car pileup, and where were you sitting in the car, you're going to have a slightly different experience. So it's not one shoe fits all.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.